Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today's video is about my 2002 911 C4 and changing out the coil packs and the spark plugs. This video is going to be broken down into two parts because it got so long, and if you want to skip forward to just get right into the install, go ahead and skip to this timestamp right here. If you want to hear about why I'm doing this and what happened, keep listening and I'll try to make it brief. I got a solid CEL come on the other day with the message "Drive to Workshop" as I was playing around a little bit on my local mountain here. Wasn't getting crazy, wasn't really going high RPM or anything, but I did downshift, accelerated, and that's when the CEL came on. And this is a sound file of what the car sounded like when that happened. So you can hear that it's kind of off, and I could feel it as I continued my drive home. That night I had about 5 miles to go to home after the CEL came on. It wasn't flashing, and I had the message "Drive to Workshop," so I figured it was safe. A couple days later I got in the car to start it to go over to O'Reilly to get the codes read, and the CEL began to flash, so I immediately turned it off. Ended up just buying a code reader, brought it home, and now I actually had I had two codes. 0327 0301. So for all of my research that I found, if you're experiencing the same problem, essentially any kind of misfire in any cylinder apparently seems to be mostly caused by coil packs going bad. There are other causes, obviously, but that was the main reason. And then I also had a knock sensor code, as you saw, and my research on that basically indicated that Porsche knock sensors generally do not go bad. I mean, it can happen, but generally it's caused by rodent damage. And in April we actually moved out kind of more in the country here in Tucson, and I don't have an enclosed garage anymore, so I thought that, okay, that's a possibility. But it didn't seem to make a lot of sense because I was driving the car and it was driving fine, and then I had that one CEL initially, so I was kind of thinking that hopefully the first CEL caused, or the first code caused the second. I called my mechanic up at McLevin Motors and talked with them, and that's kind of their thought as well. They said, well, why don't you start with changing out the coil packs and then see what happens. So that's where we're at. That's where the video is going to basically start, is me first of all changing out coil pack 1 and spark plug 1, in cylinder 1, and then retesting and starting a car and seeing how that goes. And then I ended up doing that whole side, and then video 2 will be cylinder 4, 5, and 6. I mean, essentially the same process with a few different things thrown in for good measure. But one of the themes on this whole thing is when people do this job is to drop the mufflers, and it's pretty straightforward to do that, and I talk about that in the video. But for cylinder 1 through 3 on the driver's side, I did not drop the mufflers, and it was very doable. However, on the other side, you definitely need to drop the muffler, in my opinion, to get especially cylinder 4. So let's get in the video. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you later. Here's a quick tool list. For the heat shield, you're going to need a 10mm socket and a 10mm wrench to get that rear bolt. For the coil packs, you'll need a 5mm Allen key for the stock ones, and for the new ones, an 8mm socket and or very small wrench, and you can also be a 5/16. For the spark plug, you're going to need a 5/8 inch spark plug socket, 2 extensions that are about 3 inches, a ratchet, and for the exhaust, 13mm socket and a 17mm socket. So step 1 is to remove this heat shield, and it is 2 10mm bolts. The front one you can get with a socket, the rear you're going to have to use a wrench. At least it was easier that way. There's coil pack for cylinder 3, and so obviously coil pack for cylinder 1 is back towards the back of the car, and all this muffler stuff is in the way, but I was able to get around it on this side. So here, looking up through the headers, you can see the bolt number 2 for that heat shield. And here we have the heat shield off. It was a little bit difficult to get out, but you're able to feed it through, and I set it aside to mess with that later. So here is coil pack number 1. You can see it's pretty tight up there, and you need to remove the two 5mm Allen bolts, which is a little bit fiddly, but doable. And then you also need to unclip it from the wire up top. And I'm going to show you on Coil Pack 3 so you get a better visual. So there's the 2 Allens, and then you need to raise that dust cap, and then you're going to push in near the top. You're going to hear a click, and then you just slide it up. And here's what it looks like unclipped. To get this coil pack off, basically just use an Allen key, and you just got to take your time. I moved or put my hand through the headers from the rear of the car, and just kind of, you had to do it nice and slow. But it is doable. And again, like I mentioned earlier, unclip it first. It just gives you more ability to push on the top without that coil pack moving around. Once your bolts are out and you have it unclipped, you just kind of pull on the coil pack itself. And in this one, if I remember correctly, you had to kind of slightly rotate it clockwise to get it to clear. But the tips of those coil packs will bend if you're not familiar with them, and just kind of pull it out. All right, well, that came out easier than I thought it would. So with the coil pack out, I was kind of hoping that it would look worse than it does. I don't know much about coil packs. This is my first time ever messing with them. But some of the ones I saw online were in pretty bad shape, and that kind of indicated, hey, that was what caused my CEL. This one didn't look that bad, but it does look to be original, which gave me some hope that this was possibly the problem. You could see on the end there that the rubber's a little bit missing, but other than that, it really wasn't in bad shape. Alrighty guys, so I wanted to give you a quick lowdown on how I access the spark plug in cylinder 1. So a 5/8 inch spark plug socket, and as you know, it has a little rubber grommet in there. And then I use these 2, I believe they're 3-inch extensions. This normal extension I use for cylinder 3 and cylinder 6. That works fine. So what I discovered was, and it might be just because my spark plug socket is so new, when I was test fitting this, when I pushed it in and then tried to pull it, when the spark plug was tight, and then tried to pull it back out, it would separate here versus bringing the whole thing out together. So what I had to do was actually put duct tape around this setup here so that when I did pull it out, it would stick together. One thing that you're going to notice is when you put this in the bore, if you use the same setup that I did, is that really just this much of the socket will stick out once it's tight. And it's very difficult because of the angle in the room to use your fingers to pull that out and off of the spark plug. So what I ended up doing is just putting some duct tape around here so that I had a little perch that I could pull here, and that would actually pull it out as a unit. When you are, again, I want to go back, when you are tightening, you cannot fit these all 3 together and get them into the bore just because of the angle. So what I did is, like I said, taped it here, stuck this in, then added this extension to it, and then you add your socket wrench at the end because, again, there's just not enough room. And then it's just basically, you know, tightening or loosening however you need to do it. But this is the socket or the setup that I used for 4 of the cylinders. And again, I used that one for the 2. Hopefully that helps. All right, guys, so what I did is I brought my hand in down from the front and fed it in this way, and I've got the socket, spark plug socket, and then taped to it is my little extension. So here is the spark plug from number 1. It doesn't look terrible, but it's, you know, could be replaced. Again, has about 20,000 miles on it. At this point, I was ready to put the spark plug back in cylinder 1, and it's a little bit of a pain just because of the room. And I think, honestly, if I did it again, it would probably be easier just to drop the muffler on this side as well. But you can see you still have the headers in your way, and there's still a muffler bracket in your way. It is doable. It's just slow and a little bit tedious. And again, it was new to me, and I didn't want to cross thread or any of that stuff. So I just took my time. And the spark plug is supposed to be tightened to 22 foot-pounds. All right, now we're going to put the coil pack in. I'm trying to remember how I got it out of here yet, but all right, so that actually went in. That went in pretty well. You can bend the front of those if you've never done this before. This is my first time as well. And then these Beru coil packs actually come with 2 new bolts. So I'm going to try to get those guys in there now. So the biggest issue is trying to get your hand in here to get to this bolt, because you can't, there is no room for even a little handheld ratchet to have the socket on there and the little wrench, and a regular socket definitely doesn't fit. So I got my little wrench here, 5/16, or it's really an 8mm. For some reason the new bolts are not Allen. This is a very, very slow process tightening these up. And now I still have to get this plugged in, which I'm not sure how I'm going to do that at this point. But I got to get this guy up here plugged back into the top of this. So I got to find that and go from there. So that's my next obstacle. Okay guys, so now I've got everything. I got the one cylinder, one coil pack, and spark plug in. They're both new. And I'm gonna start the car and see if my codes come back and see if the car's running better. And God willing, this was my issue. Hopefully this cures the knock sensor, or the knock sensor code doesn't come back. So I'm gonna go grab my keys and we'll start it up. I'm really sorry I forgot to hit record when I started, but the car sounds like it's running perfectly right now, just like it was before this issue happened. I haven't got any codes yet. The exhaust has evened out, and it just sounds great. I can't drive it for a while because I'm just going to do all the other spark plugs and coil packs. So thank you, Lord. Yay. It's a couple days later. I've been busy the last couple days. When we left off last, I had cylinder 1, spark plug, and coil pack in, and now I just wanted to kind of give you a quick show you how I got number 2 out. I've already got the coil pack out from number 2, and it was a little bit of a pain. It's a little bit tight with the muffler bracket in the way, but I was able to get that off. And so this is how, again, I'm sorry for the camera view here, but you could see here's the ratchet, and I just got it with 2 kind of shorter extensions, and then on the socket to get out, and it's actually was pretty straightforward. So you just slowly work the spark plug out for cylinder 2. Pretty straightforward. Again, you can just see it's real tight. I had already done coil pack and spark plug number 3, and those were very straightforward. Like I mentioned earlier, you can use a full extension because you've got all kinds of room to get those out. And both of those spark plugs look pretty decent also. Here's a look. So there was looked like a little bit of oil on this plug. And unfortunately I can't see down in there at all because the muffler's in the way. So here's cylinder 2's coil pack. And you can just kind of get an idea that there's just not a lot of room for your fingers in there to get these little bolts in there. But we'll give it a shot. By looking here, you can see that is difficult to get a socket on these bolts on number 2 as well. So I ended up using my 5/8 inch tiny wrench that I have, or 8mm is probably preferable, but that was the way I had to do these as well. It's just not enough room to get it up in there. Quick view of how the coil pack slides in. This is cylinder 3. It's good visual so you can see it. You just push it all the way until it's firm, and then put the bolts in. Once the bolts are secure, you reconnect the connector and pull the dust cover down. One issue I did have, because of the type of torque wrench that I have, I could not tighten cylinder 1 and 2 down to the appropriate torque. So basically I just tightened them down by hand with what felt like 22 foot-pounds on cylinder 3. That was really the best I could do. And I did not find anything for these, so I just snugged them down. Not crazy tight. I mean, this is plastic. I got the driver's side finished. I'm just going to start the car again. Just make sure before I take it off the stand, or button everything up over here. Battery sounds like it's getting a little low. So far, no lights. I'm going to let it run for a little while this time. And you can hear the exhaust sounds much better. Nice and even again, versus it was really lumpy when I got the check engine light. So I am really, really pleased with that. I was, with these 996s, it's scary when something goes weird. And I'd not had a check engine light, so thankfully it was a pretty easy fix. And thanks to McElvin Motors, who are my guys up in Phoenix, who helped me with this, and also the forums, Renlist especially.